We're going to interview today the psychiatrist, Professor Steve Peters. So I'm going to go straight over to Steve live and see how he is today. So Steve, how are you today?
I was good, I was very good. I'm here in the Peak District, and again, it's fantastic weather. Make the most of it,
Oh yes, we all love our sun here. Stephen, I'd like to turn back time, so I'm going to turn back the clock. So where did it all start for you?
Well, I'm assuming you mean sport now, because
yes.
Actually my life started a long time ago. So I think I'd like to just preempt that by saying, obviously, I'm coming into this interview as a background as a doctor who specialised in mental health and worked in the NHS for 20 years. And then life in sport began back in 2001, was the first point of contact with elite sport. That was really just fortuitous. It wasn't a planned entry into sport. I often say to people I'm not a sports fan, which shocks them. I like most things in life, but I can't say I'm a great sports fan. So I've gone in there to help what I can do, but I'm not an expert in sport. So when I ask the question today about this, can I just emphasise, if you've got problems in sport, sports psychologists are your specialists, and they're the people you turn to, and there's a sprinkling psychiatrists involved. So in 2001, I got asked by a previous medical student of mine. I teach at Sheffield Medical School, and I was undergraduate dean there, and he went and took a job with British Cycling, and he said, could you give me an opinion on a cyclist on mental health issues? So my first actual interview with an elite person was in British Cycling and looking at mental health issues in an athlete. So in this interview, I'm not going to name anyone. As a doctor, I can't. But if people have given permission, I will let people know. So just to tantalise, I'm not going to tell you who that was because I can't. But from that, it escalated. I worked with them and they asked what I was doing. And I said, well, basically, I'm just using what I know as a doctor and the therapeutic styles we work with in getting you to understand your mind and then knowing how to run your mind and work with it. It escalated and I was given Chris Hoy, who's done a lot of work with me, obviously, and on stage, and Vicky Pendleton, and a number of other elite athletes. So it's a privilege to be at the start of their careers almost with them, and then working with them as they got their first medals. So the whole thing just escalated. British Swimming came in next, and then it just became one after another saying, what is it you're doing? Because it was a novel approach.
Yeah. So you have been to the Olympic Games, I believe?
Yeah, that was at the beginning, and I didn't want the limelight because I just felt I'm doing what I do. I'm a doctor, and I was invited to go to Athens Olympics with Chris and Vicky and obviously the team. And I went almost undercover as a secret, don't tell anybody. And Chris got his gold medal, which was amazing. And Dave Brailsford, the head of cycling at that point, said he was very excited and said, you could do this for a living. And I remember that moment of horror thinking about that, because I was working at that time at Rampton with what would be colloquially called serial killers and psychopaths, and I just wanted to get back to them and thought, that is my world, that's where I am, a specialist in the human mind and how it functions. But it was a massive privilege to be in Athens, but it was an eye-opener about the scenes at the Olympic Games and what goes on.
Yeah, you talk about the Olympic Games. How many Olympic Games have you been involved in?
I've been to 4 Olympics now since then. I went to Athens, then we did Beijing, London and Rio, and I'm lined up for Tokyo as and when it happens. The Olympic Games is very different. When you see it on the telly, as I watched years ago, when the Olympics comes up and you see how we're doing as a nation, very different behind the scenes. A lot of security, a lot of unpleasantness in a way. It's very busy, but you don't see much because you're constantly travelling. And then very long hours. You'll start, for me, 6 in the morning as the first riders, or whoever you're working with, Taekwondo I work with, go out to compete, and you don't get home till maybe midnight. So they're really long hours. And when I went to Rio, we had to have accommodation that we could get, and I was given somebody's house or flat, and it was pretty horrendous. The shower was, the drainage pipe for the shower base was higher than the actual shower tray, so you had to step into dirty water. You couldn't get rid of this, and there was green and black mould all around you. And I think people don't see that side of it. It's glamorous, but boy, there's some eye openers behind the scenes.
Well, it's like true in most sports, isn't it, Stephen? That we only ever see the athletes perform, but we never see what goes on behind the scenes. I'd like to touch on there that you work with so many different types of sports. It must be quite difficult to have that diversity from working with, let's say, a snooker player who needs to be calm and collective against someone in like taekwondo or boxing, for instance. So how do you work with people with so much difference?
That's a really good point, and I do get asked that to explain. And I think this is crucial, is when I enter a sport, say somebody approaches me and it's something like golf, which I've worked with golfers and I don't know anything about golf. I've never played it. That's not important to me. What's important, I start with the person and get the person to be in a good state of mind so that they're ready to go out there and do whatever it is they want to do. So it doesn't necessarily have to be sport. I have to learn about the person. We work as a team. Right. They get insights into the way their mind works. Then I ask them, what are you going into? And they teach me the nuances of snooker, golf, rugby, swimming. So I have to learn their world. It's just the way I approach it. But my starting point is get away from your world and let's get you in a great place. And then we'll look at the nuances of your world and what you're up against and what's stressing you or how you want to improve performance. That's the way I've done it.
Fantastic. The other thing I'd like to touch on there, you say you're not really a sports fan, Steve, but as I know, we do Masters Athletics, which is track and field. Can you elaborate a little bit more on Masters Athletics? What is that about?
Yeah, that was an accident again. My life is just like I'm a leaf in the wind and I'm enjoying it. I don't really plan things, but I was helping out with athletics. I was years and years ago this was, and they asked if I would give some help to judge, and I did. And then one of the guys took in on 4x100 metres, and they said, "Can you put a pair of shorts and just run 100 metres for us?" And I did run it. I was so sick. I was so unfit. And after vomiting, they came and said that was quite nippy. So I decided that I would do it just for fun. So I ran for years for fun, and I was encouraged by one of the people I worked with at the time, Darren, who it just encouraged me very pleasantly by saying, run at your own level and enjoy it and just push your boundaries. And so she sort of set me off into athletics. And then at 40, I realised it was the Masters Athletics. I didn't realise it's now 35. But at 40, it was like a swan song because I just ran with the younger guys and I thought, I'm getting to be an old man. So I went to quit and they said, do the British, and I won the British title. And that's when I thought, oh, wow, maybe I'm doing better than I thought. So then I started training and my peak was at 44. I've gone downhill since. And so at 44, I then won world titles as well and European titles. And I do it now. It's great fun. I do enjoy it. And as you know, because we met there, it's a great scene. It's a social scene. But for me, it keeps me fit, keeps me healthy, stops me putting weight on. And so I enjoy it for that side of it.
Yeah, I totally agree. And the thing is, with the Masters Athletics, there's no standard, is there? That anyone can just participate from, as you say, from the age of 35. And we do see 100 years old running on the track, and I've seen 80-year-olds doing pole vaulting, which is a little bit, you sit back, but it's fantastic what they do, what we can do.
Yeah, and I think I'd encourage people to do it, because obviously it's a social scene as well, and it gives you targets and makes you get out and train if you're competing. But somebody really, really impressed me when we did the World Championships in South Africa. I went on there to win 100 metres, which was a bit of a shock. It's not my event. I was telling people, I got into it by the telly, and I said, I've come here to get the 200 metre title, which I lost. And then I won the 100, which I said was a warm-up, which that didn't go down well. But one guy impressed me, and it was the first round. It was a massive field. I think we had nearly 100 guys, and there were 10 in a heat, and first only to qualify with some fastest losers. So it was ridiculously difficult qualification. And this guy was running really, what I would have said was slow. He was running about 15 seconds. For a 40-year-old, that is pretty modest. But what impressed me is he said to me, I haven't come here to win, I've come here for the social scene, but also to do my personal best. And that is one of the things I absolutely love in people. He didn't care what the rest of us did. He said, I've come to enjoy myself, I'll enjoy watching you, but I will get a personal best. And he did that. And so I think I'd be saying to people, come and enjoy doing your personal best.
Yes, that's what it's all about, isn't it? I think, especially with the masters athletics, that at every level, everyone can compete and just enjoy it and be a part of a team, which is always a great feeling. Now, Steve, we know you're an author.
I am.
So I'm going to touch on your book because I have it here today with me.
Yeah.
The Chimp Paradox. So can we have a little bit of discussion on the Chimp Paradox and what it is? I know it's mind management, but I'm going to put it over to you and we can tell the listeners out there what this book is basically about, please.
Yeah, I mean, I know, like, just to be open, you sent me a few questions from people, so there was a few questions that I could answer while we do that, and that is, what inspired me is when I became a doctor and I decided to move along from medicine, surgery and so on and enter mental health, what struck me is that a lot of people came through the door were not what I would classify as mentally ill needing medication. Obviously, I would give that if it's needed, but a lot of people didn't need medication, and what they needed is insights into the way that they are thinking and behaving. And it just struck me there's something not right with the way we're looking at the mind. And I had this eureka moment where, applying it to myself, you look and think, why would you get anxious about something that's not what you want to do? So it's blatantly obvious the machine that we're in is promoting this anxiety, and somehow we can't manage it. But then I went further than that and realised that when you look at the previous people who've set this foundation for this, like Freud, Jung, Beck was cognitive behavioural, they're all onto things, it's great, but what I felt personally was missing was that our minds actually generate thinking, and they also generate agendas which aren't necessarily ours. So, for example, I say I'd like to get fit, but I know that my mind is actually kicking against that. So when I go to run, they say, what are you doing at this age? Why don't you just go home and enjoy donuts and coffee? And I've got these thoughts coming in thinking, why have I got these thoughts? When actually I don't agree or approve of them. And I got this impatience. So looking at scanners and the neuroscience behind it, you start to realise that basically the brain has got three teams in action. And that's what I wanted to bring to the public. So I tried it with patients, said, you don't generate these thoughts of low self-esteem or fear of failure. They're coming from a machine. So if I can show you how that machine is structured and the rules, can you learn it? Now, I took time on this. I was a bit slow. For 2 years, I thought, why don't we do this? Because that's the machine working. And then a magical word finally dawned on me, which was, it's a skill. So if people are watching this and they're trying this, don't give up, because you have to persist. Like anything, it is an emotional skill you're learning to recognise and manage your mind. And when that dawned on me, I was able to say to people, let's work together steadily until you get these light bulb moments. Then I saw a lot of progress. It's not for everybody, but I felt then, after doing this for nearly 15 years, and I had the medical students at Sheffield, the people if they've been helped by the book can thank, I decided to put it into print because I didn't want to do it wrong. I didn't want it to be not based on absolute neuroscience, because that's my world, I'm a scientist, but I wanted it accessible and fun for people, though there is obviously a very serious side to it. So that's how the Chimp Paradox came about.
When I've looked through the book myself, Steve, what I love about it is simplicity. It really is understandable. We have like 3 different notions in it. We have, I'll try and explain a little bit to the audience out there what I know. We've separated it into three different segments, your brain. One being the chimp, one being the human, and one being the computer. Can you sort of elaborate how we've done this and where the chimp, the human, and the computer comes in?
Yeah, when I'm teaching this at university, obviously I'm teaching all the different therapies, and I think there's brilliant therapies out there, and obviously I'd say to anyone, stick with what works for you, whether we as academics validate it or not. It's important that you go with what works for you. But what struck me is the chimp brain, when I started looking at this back in the 90s, I realised that there was a similarity between us and the chimpanzee. I spoke to hominid specialists at that point, and the hominids are the great apes. So you've got gorillas, orangutans, bonobos, chimpanzees, and humans. But for some reason, the chimp and the human brains seem to be functioning different to the others. That's been validated in some research in 2017. So, but I jumped a bit early because I wanted to get this out and make a guess. So I'm a bit maverick. But what they were saying is chimpanzees have the same kind of approach in life, but they do not have emotional skills. And what they don't use is the part of the brain I'm classing as the human, which is at the top of your head, the dorsolateral areas. They don't operate with that. It's exceptional to see them use that. It's primitive. Whereas we tend to use that after we've used our chimp-type brain, which is just above our eyes. And that brain's identical in the chimp and other animals. So that's why I give it the name inner chimp, because when we lose it, people laugh and say, yeah, we do look like chimps. We start raving and using our hands. And so I thought, if when we're doing it, that's your inner chimp. The human is the added on bit that humans do start predominantly using when we're rational and logical, and we start working with sensibility and perspective. And finally, the most important part is the computer system, which is not just a memory bank, but this actually gives advice to the human and chimp. So neuroscientifically, all information spins through the brain, almost like a circle, and it comes back to the chimp and human for them to make decisions, but it's already gone through the computer, which is then going to guide them or literally take over. So it was complex, and I tried to make complex things simple. So I'm glad you could follow it.
Yes, it's more simplified for my good self. Obviously, I can relate to the book. I think that's what's brilliant about it. And I love the little story because I related with it so well. I understand that it was like, and I work as a personal trainer, Steve, and my clients and myself relate to the story where we're all like, you know, trying to be healthy, trying to look out, and everything's going well through the week, your diet's going well, everything's going well, and then someone comes up and says, here's a cake or a biscuit, something that you crave for, whatever it is, and you love it, and someone says, you can have a bit of that, and you turn around and you say, do you know what, I'm going to have that piece of cake or biscuit or glass of wine or whatever it is. And then for some reason, 20 minutes later or later on, you go, why did I have that? I didn't really want it, and it messes you up. So can you tell me a little bit what's the thinking or what's behind that? Why do we do that?
I'll try and get this really simple. So if I don't get it right, so I'm going to do it again. Because this is really important. I used to run eating disorder clinics, and for most of it, it's just annoying. But for some people, it's tragic, really. It's not fun when you have a real eating problem. So I wouldn't trivialise, but for most of us, we know what it's like, where you think, why on earth? So here it goes. When inflammation hits the brain, there it is, the donut or the cake in front of you. What happens is your chimp brain immediately is impulsive and says, I'm going to eat it because the pleasure will be immense. What the chimp brain cannot do is look forward and see a long-term consequence. And long-term to the chimp is 20 minutes. So what it does is it does something amazing. It makes the decision to eat the cake, and it literally uses hormones. It can use around 30 and transmitters to block your ability to interfere with it. How clever is that? So the chimp's got the upper hand in our brain because it's built for survival, and eating the cake is good news for survival, not just pleasure. When it runs to the computer system, if the computer system hasn't got anything in place that's really solid, the chimp will act. What the chimp does is when it's had its piece of cake or whatever it's doing, shouting and screaming, being inappropriate, regretting, 20 minutes is about the right time. It's about 7 to 20 minutes. It releases the brake on the top of your head, and you come to life now, and that's why you have this delay where you suddenly think, why did I do this? Why did I say that? Or why was I, for example, before 400 metres, why was I so anxious? At the end of the day, we're only running in a circle, get a life. But at the time, the chimp sees it so catastrophically that we stand with dry mouth, thinking it's the end of the world, I'm going to look foolish, I won't make it round, why didn't I train more? Then the gun goes, off you go, you finish the race and then think, what was it all about? So that was the exact reason I brought this out, to say, this is why it distresses me to see people in distress, and if I can help them to see what's going on and then learn how to stop that, how to manage your chimp, then that's what I've spent my life doing and will continue to do. So it can be trivial, it can be serious.
Yeah, so the book basically is for elite sports people to use, but the general public to use is for a wider audience.
Yeah, I was reading for the general public, and I deliberately tried to keep everything simple. So I didn't want it to be an academic book. I didn't want tons of references that put people off. which I know was criticised, and obviously I am doing another book, and there will be science references for those who want to do that. But I wanted Joe Public to say, you know what, this is so simple, I get it, and I can use it. So that was what it was about.
Yeah, and I believe that's brilliant about it. I believe it's sold over 1.3 million copies now, and it's also in audio, I believe, as well.
Yeah, including the hardback books, the audio, and the ebooks. Yeah, it's. I feel really, really humbled. I say it's not for everyone, but I've had so many people writing to me. So I can be honest and say, when I wrote this, my chimp was twitching and saying, "What are they going to think? The public are going to think I'm nuts." Typical psychiatrist. And I might get challenged by the academic community, and so my chimp was really going for it. And then I just thought, I sat in my room here, and I thought, if 10 people write to me and say, this has changed my life, then it's worth it. And if I get berated, so I get berated. I'm not that important. And so 10 people wrote to me within a week. And so I felt elated by this. And I kept those, and I thanked the people for writing to me, because it helped settle my chimp. And whenever my chimp, someone criticises, oh, this is rubbish, or you just pinched ideas, or this isn't original, I don't mind now, because I look at those 10 people. So I'm absolutely astounded and humbled by the fact that it's done so well and helped so many people. So thank you for those who've written. It helps me.
So if everyone at home there or listening, if you can please like and share this interview, that'll be brilliant. Steve, we're going to touch on lockdown now. Your thoughts on lockdown, because that's what we're in at the moment, and your thoughts on it.
Yeah, I think going with the model I've got. So if you say, right, I get this idea, there's two of us trying to run my life, me and this chimp. And the chimp's not a bad influence. I don't think it's wrong. I always describe it as the most dedicated friend you'll ever have, but so inept, you've just got to tolerate them, because they just get it wrong all the time. So you're going to work together. What I'd be saying to people is, it's about preparation. For me, I practice this myself. I get up in the morning, I come into my office, and I set out my day, and I have a chat with my chimp. So at the moment, I'm really, really busy, and I'm dealing with a lot of very tragic circumstances, you can imagine, but also a lot of what I call trivia that people could really just take a breath and think, come on, let's get life here, but it's not to them. So I have to say to my chimp, it doesn't matter how trivial you think it is, it's important to the person. So I do that as a warning to me, and I structure my day. So I have meetings planned, Zoom meetings and whatever, and I put them in the diary. Structuring my day helps my chimp to think, right, we know what we're doing. What the time out is, I have time out for coffee, then I have, right, the next hour, this is what we focus on. So it's important that the chimp will work by being talked to and structured. If we don't structure our day, which I know everyone keeps pushing, and I know they're all college psychiatrists are pushing to people, if we don't structure our day, then in my model, the chimp takes over. And now we could go anywhere. So our eating habits become unhealthy. We regret them, as you pointed out. Anything that we've got in our head starts getting overemphasized. So like anxiety states can get worse, eating disorders get worse, depression can get worse. So what I'd be saying in cases like that, or even if you feel just low in mood or lost, is most of our chimps and most of us live on other people. So keep in touch with your friends and have dedicated times during the day where you do Zoom calls to your friends and your mates. That is a massive stabiliser emotionally, because it pulls us back in line and gives us some perspective. So don't isolate yourself with your thoughts. And if you get negative thoughts, you have a choice. So I'd be saying to people, remember, you always have a choice to disengage and say, no, what would I like to focus on? So I've rambled a bit there. I'll tell you what I'd like to do, because we're out of time. Do you want to have a look at some of the questions that people sent us in and just fire a few questions at me?
Yes, I think we'll do that. If anyone's got any questions, just post the questions in the comment box. So we're going to go for a few sports questions. I'm going to run through first. And we'll go we're going for Paul Woods of Runcorn. How did you start working with Ronnie O'Sullivan, and how did you actually get into listen?
That's a really tough one. Ronnie and I obviously go back now nearly 10 years, and he came in via another person I was working with, an elite athlete who his agent recommended to Ronnie's agent that he met me. Ronnie has given me permission and says, tell everybody everything. He's a really, really entertaining and pleasant guy and a good friend. So I have a lot of time for Ronnie. Very different man behind locked doors at times to what you see, but also very, very straightforward. When he came in, I didn't ask him to buy in. What I did is said, look, you've come here, you may as well have a listen to what I've got to say at the end. Throw it out with the rubbish if you don't like it. The second I started saying, let me just describe an inner chimp and this, he just lit up. Now, I've got to praise him on this. I am from Yorkshire, you said at the beginning. I'm from North Yorkshire, spade to spade. And what I say to people is, I am a doctor who says, yeah, you are wasting my time. But I'll get behind anyone who's trying. So what I said to him is, I did say at the end of the session, right, I'm going to stop now, I've given you enough to think. If you're really serious, go away, buy a hardback book, which I ask most people I work with to do, write out questions for me and come back and I'll answer them. But don't come back without the book, because that means you're not serious. Because the person does the work, not me. I can't get them to do things, they get to do it themselves. He came back a week later, and I saw him, and he had a book, and we started working through it. And after 2 hours, my head was going. I said, "You're doing my head in, Ronnie." And I looked, and I said, "How many questions have you got?" We covered seriously one side. It's really true. He had 20 pages of questions, and I just thought, this guy's going to get there. So it was a privilege and still is to be a friend and work with him and be a mentor. But he takes it very seriously. He doesn't always get it right because it's a skill. So all of us will get it wrong. So that's how it happened. I don't ask people to buy in. I give them the information to see if they want to go further.
Right, we'll go on. Yes, that's great for Ronnie O'Sullivan. Angela Kelly asked, it might be Ronnie O'Sullivan here, who's your most challenging athlete you've worked with?
Everyone is easy to work with. It's whether they themselves find it challenging. So I'll put it a different way. Sometimes the questions aren't maybe the right questions. So I don't have any challenging athletes. I'd say there was an athlete I worked with for 4 years before she understood the chimp model properly and then applied it and went on to win an Olympic medal. And you would say then people say, got patience are the same, but I don't see it that way. I think we're up against it together. It's a joint effort. So people will probably say she was challenging, but I had one who was 8 years, who had a massive light bulb moment and transformed almost overnight. So you just got to work with people at what they can do. So I like athletes who challenge me. I like that because if I've got nothing to hide and nothing to defend, I can answer the questions. So I like an athlete who drills into me and says, no, that's not working, try again. That I like that a lot. So I can't, if I'm honest, Angela, to answer, I don't think there's an athlete I think is a big challenge to me because it's more some athletes struggle for quite a while before we make real good ground.
Right, I'm going to touch on one of my questions, Stephen, for athletes out there. You have guys who do really well in training and do some really good training times, but then when they come to race, they seem to blow it in race either through distraction or the nerves get the better of them. How can we address that problem?
Okay, try and keep this one simple and say the ideal scenario is this. If you imagine while you're in training, to be honest, because you're not being assessed by other people, and it's just a stopwatch or whatever it is, a measure that you're doing, people can let their chimps actually join in. And it's the chimp as your best friend now. So you get a lot of energy from this emotional aspects of your brain, and they will drive you forward. So the chimp drives us, and it gets good results, and so I'm not against the chimp. But when we come to compete, the chimp, true to nature, flicks into defence mode and gets terrified. Because what the chimp's job is to look for danger. So it looks at competitors and says, they're fitter than me, I'm never going to beat them. It starts looking at itself and downing itself, saying, you're going to get eaten alive out here. It looks at the crowd and says, they're all going to see how bad I am. Everyone's going to talk about it. It's going to be registered for life, this terrible time. That's the kind of thing our chimp thinks. If you talk to the athlete, they'll say, it doesn't matter, all I can do is my best. I can't do better than my best. And I say this, if you had a 5-year-old child and you loved them and they wanted to run and they were terrified, what would you say? And you'd say, go and enjoy it, do your best, doesn't matter. You've got to take that advice. The difficulty is our chimps cannot overpower the human brain. So we have to program the computer to learn how to manage the chimp. And that's what the book is about, saying, what do you put in that computer? And it's unique to the person. Everyone's different. So I work with the person, say, what are the key things that make you stop in your tracks and think, that's just settled my chimp? And then what you do is you do a mental warm-up so that you bring these things into play before you walk out to compete. So it is a programmed way of working that I use. Don't forget, everyone uses different. So you might be working with a sports psychologist or the experts in the field who have a very different approach, and that could be the best thing for you. You just have to work with what resonates with you. So in a nutshell, from what you're asking is, I expect the chimp to do that. Don't get upset by it. Let's look at how we disengage it and work in this computer mode of process and do our events. And then you should optimize your performance.
Thank you. I've just got one more sports question, and I want to move on to a little bit about the mental health, if that's okay, Stephen. Do you think there's a lot of wasted talent because of mindset?
Again, I'm asked this a lot, whether they say how important is the mind of the person, and I've got to ask the person, really. I can't say that, but I guess nearly everyone says to me is probably the most crucial, because exactly what you said, we can get physically fit. That's not the hard bit, the training. Most people say I can do that. In the competition, it's our minds that start playing up. And that's what stops us from getting ultimate performance. And if we can get into the zone or the flow, which I have a look at neuroscientifically, basically that's saying get into computer mode. So I think, yes, it's sad when you see people underperforming because of their minds, but it's been a massive privilege for me, not just in sport, in business, in personal relationships, to get people to suddenly perform at their best, where they're presenting themselves to the world in the way they want to, and then they maximise whatever it is they're trying to do.
Thank you for that, Steve. I'm going to move on to a little bit about the situation we're in today and about mental health.
Yeah.
So, what's your thoughts, or do you think people's outlook on life will change after the lockdown has ended, and will we go back to normal, and will it be for the better, as we take things for granted when we're not in lockdown, but as we're in lockdown, we can't do certain things. So do you think that will change for the better?
Okay, I mean, bear in mind I'm a psychiatrist, so I'm not in a position to predict what the future is going to be for everyone. But so I'm going to turn it on its head and twist the question slightly by saying, what I would do if I were working with you or anybody, anyone listening to this, to say, what do you want to change now you've had a chance to go into lockdown and reflect on what's going on? That's the question I'd ask. How will it change your world, not the world? And what do you want to change when you come out of lockdown? Have you had a chance to reflect on what works for you, what doesn't work for you, and what changes you've got in place that are going to give you better quality of life?
Thank you. We've got a question from Gary Swan. What impact do you think the lockdown will have on people's mental health, especially people who have not been diagnosed?
Again, yeah, it's a worry to us as doctors, as psychiatrists, I'm sure to clinical psychologists, therapists and so on, all of us in this field that are trying to help people. I think it is a big concern that we're not sure what the fallout from this is going to be, but you can imagine that for most people, it's going to have lasting effects because it has challenged a lot of their beliefs and it's shaken the world. And a lot of people have lost loved ones and a lot of people have felt under a lot of threat from this and realised their own mortality is not quite as solid as they realise. They think, wow, it could happen to anyone. So I think these inevitably, when we're challenged with this kind of thing in life, stops us in our tracks to refocus. What I'd be saying is try to look ahead to when the lockdown ends and prepare yourself mentally. And if people are struggling now, get help, because there are lots of online areas you can go to. I run a little company, it's Chimp Management, where we're saying that, get in touch if you're struggling. But there are lots out there. If you go on the internet, or you may have friends who can recommend someone who's in this field. So don't hesitate to get in touch and get support. Can I say, because I know there was a question about this with men's health, and suicide is a bit heavy. Men tend not to talk. We know that. We try and encourage, but it's almost like we know the brain in women is built to communicate much better than men. We have to accept that. There are, if we look at it very black and white, they have about 5 levels of communication. Men have about 3. So we are actually at a disadvantage. So there you go, girls. You've got an advantage on us. And we accept that. But it does mean that the consequence, a lot of men fail to be able to express emotion and culturally feel it's wrong to do so. There's a massive group called CALM, C-A-L-M, and this is Campaign Against Living in Misery. And if you get in touch with them, they're on the internet, they will specific for helping men to get these feelings out and so on. So, and again, if women are struggling with this, I'm sure CALM would help them. But again, There are lots of places you can go and get help. Don't sit with it. Talk.
A question from Lucinda Stone about pain. We have pain mentally and physically. So what part of the brain do we get that from? And can we overcome that bit of pain? Because we know we get pain from training, but you can get also emotional pain, and you get pain from an injury, let's say.
Yeah, or a broken heart, or loss of a job, or anything that's changing our life and it's not welcome. This is going to be complex neuroscience, so I'm sure they can look at it again if they don't quite follow. Pain is a strange one. Recent research has shown that really emotional pain and physical pain are received in the same part of the brain, but they come from a different pathway. But actually both are perceived as physical pain. So it's not surprising that people say, I'm dying from a broken heart, because physically that's what it feels like. Your insides are being ripped out. So pain is really just an entity, whether it's emotional or physical. The areas of the brain that dominate this, most people would put the anterior cingulate gyrus. This is the part of the brain that tells us how strong that pain is or how important it is. So that part deciphers the magnitude of it. And it's influenced by two particular hormones, oxytocin and the natural opioids we present in our brain. The amygdala joins in. It's complex, but from that, I'd say perceive the brain as an orchestra is the best way of explaining it. All the instruments come in, but often in one piece of music, one leads. So when it comes to pain, the leading instruments are there, but all the brain is engaged. So you can't just say this bit's on the brain. All of them. Anterior cingulate gyrus, if you want to look up in neuroscience, and amygdala, opioids and oxytocin. Oxytocin is the bonding love chemical, but it's got a much more sinister side to it. It also is involved in pain and perception of pain. So this leads on to saying, a lot of research shows that it depends on our beliefs around pain. We know that people, when they get depressed, perceive pain much more than if they're not depressed. So we know that cognitive, that means thinking process, is affected a lot. So it's about getting yourself in a good place, and then you will perceive the pain less. Easier said than done, but that's the theory behind it. But it's based around some research on testosterone. Testosterone is a chemical which gives us confidence, dominance, and it's a sex drive. Its main function appears to be dominance, but this is intriguing. If we go to a 100-metre sprint, and we believe that we could win this, we believe this, our testosterone levels go up. If we believe we're going to get beaten, they actually deplete. Which means if you apply that to life in general, if you're a person that goes out there thinking, you know what, I'm going to have a go, because whatever I do, I'm going to measure my success on the fact that I tried, you're much more likely to get boosted in testosterone, which is a well-being chemical in men and women, and therefore it is this idea of positive thinking, but I'm not promoting positive thinking brings results. I'm saying there's evidence that if you approach things in a positive manner, that's different, then hormones follow that. If you approach in apprehension, don't believe you can do it, then you're going to drop these. So it's a very complex area when it comes to pain and perception of pain. It's not straightforward. So that was a long-winded answer. Sorry.
Right, well, I'm gonna be closing it up shortly, Steve. But I want to finish on a lighter note. Have you got any funny stories with athletes or teams that you've worked with?
Yeah, I'll demonstrate the Chimp and Ronnie O'Sullivan. This amused me. And he's given me full permission. A great guy. When I started working with me, he was struggling, hadn't won anything major for 3 years, and then he asked me, "Can you help me do this?" Clearly, he's going to win it, not me. But his mindset was really all over, and we worked, and he bought in, and he went and he won the world title. Now, every year up to then, there was this joke in the snooker world that he announces his retirement. So I said, "We're not going to do that this year." He said, "No, we're not going to do it." And as soon as he won the interview, and he said, "I'd like to announce my retirement." So I can't believe this. So the next year, I thought, we've got to program a response. He's got to be able to say, "No, I'm going to think about it." So we actually rehearsed that, right? 2013, he won the world title again. And I went to the after party. I did it the first year because that's not my scene and I'd done my job. But he said, "I want you there, I want you there," because it's just Ronnie and myself working as a team. Anyway, he won the title, and they said, "And what about next year?" And he said, "I'd like to announce my retirement." I thought, I can't believe this. So his Chimp just kept doing it. And we got into the after party, and he saw me in the room, it was packed with people. And he came across, gave me this big hug, and he phoned on, and he said to me, "Steve, I've done it again. The chimp done it again. And he said, give them an interview, tell them. And I said, okay, I'll do it. So I had this BBC interview afterwards saying, you know, Ronnie's an emotional man, and he speaks what he thinks at the time, but then he changes his mind quickly, and he's reassuring me. So, you know, sometimes you can see the chimp in him, and these are the moments where I take a deep breath and think, it is hard work with the chimp truth with people, and I'm not immune. And you just got to take a side and think, your chimp is going to get the better of you many, many times. Don't beat it up, don't beat yourself up, make friends with it. And that's what Ronnie did. It became his friend, and then he said, I'm getting a lot better with it now.
That's brilliant. Thank you for sharing. Right, I'm going to give you one last question, and then we're going to call it. Okay. So this is one from the last question I'm going to ask is from Becky Lewis. Many people don't participate because of anxiety and skipping out of their comfort zone, or stepping out of their comfort zone. Sorry. Is there any tips for this?
Yeah. It's going to sound really weird. Don't compete. I'm not a person saying, I'm saying if you really want to compete, then let's look at how we manage this. And the big thing now would be, don't muddle adrenaline up with anxiety. These are two different entities. And people often say to me, I'm nervous, when they aren't nervous at all. So anxiety is when you have negative thoughts attached to the adrenaline. That is anxiety. Adrenaline gives you very unpleasant physical symptoms, which you need to interpret correctly as being, my body's getting prepared. So you get dry mouth, you get a bit tremulous, you get rapid heartbeat, you feel a bit weak. That's not anything to do with anxiety. You expect that to happen in most athletes. Welcome it, say, this is great, I'm getting ready. That then becomes, it's a term I know doesn't exist, but I use it with my athletes to say I'm adrenalized, which is a very uncomfortable place to be. It's not a pleasant sensation, but we always know this. Remind yourself that the second you start whatever you're competing in, adrenaline by its very nature can only last for literally seconds, we're measuring it in, to a maximum of 2 minutes. And people know this. The second you compete, that will go. So therefore, tell yourself when you're getting these adrenalized feelings, as soon as I get going, I'll be fine, because that's the truth. So if you can crack that in. If it is anxiety, then have a look at your belief systems. And again, get a sports psychologist to do that with you. Check out what are your belief systems here and change those beliefs so that when this information spins through the computer in your brain, it gives the chimp some solid, true beliefs. But if you're really, really, really uptight and you think this is so unpleasant, then enjoy sport without competing. And I've worked with a number of athletes who don't compete and love the sport now and say I enjoy it just against my own watch because nobody watches and I love it. So again, I'm not saying you've got to get over this. Don't throw the baby out of the bathwater. Still enjoy your sport. If you don't want to compete, don't compete. But if you want to do it, that's adrenaline, thoughts.
Thank you very much for that. Thank you very much for that, Stephen.
Can I just say, Darren, before we call, just very important, if somebody's got mental health issues, please, when you watch this, get in touch with someone appropriate to get support. Don't let it go. And also, all the stuff I've talked about is only a personal opinion and experience. I've got some knowledge and some experience. If people are not happy, don't worry about it. Throw out what I've said out of the rubbish and go with what resonates with you. You know, I may be an expert in the field, but that doesn't mean I'm right. I'm just offering things. So I think it's really important that most people might get upset thinking, oh, I'm on the wrong track. You may not be. All right, but I want to say thank you to you for arranging this, Darren. It's been a pleasure, and I'll see you on the track soon.
All right, thank you very much, Steve, for your time. It's been a privilege. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.